I'd like to call this meeting of the Planning Commission to order for June 4th, 2015. Oh, all right. Okay, I'd like to have a roll call of the members, please.
Bowden, Alan Bucknam,
Present.
Steve Timms,
Here.
Scott Ohm,
Here.
Emery Dorsey,
Here.
Amanda Weaver is absent, Donna Kimsey,
Here.
and Pam Olson is currently absent.
Thank you. Could we all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next up on our agenda is approving the order of the agenda.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the order of the agenda.
A second?
I'll second that.
Okay, please vote.
That motion is approved. 6-0, thank you.
All right. Next up is approval of the minutes.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes of May 7, 2015.
I'll second it.
Call for a vote.
That motion is approved. Mention Commissioner Timms, thank you.
Okay, next item up is the public forum. This is the time for any person to speak on any subject not appearing on the agenda. If you're here to speak in regards to the case that's on the agenda, you will have that opportunity during that case. But if there's something else you'd like to discuss, do we have it? Did anybody sign in, Meredith?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Anybody who didn't sign in want to say anything else? Okay. All right, moving on to the public hearing for case number WS1502, an application filed by Daniel Muse, or Muse, I'm sorry if I'm butchering that name, it's my fault, requesting approval of a replat of Quail Ridge Estates subdivision for a 25-lot major subdivision on property zoned planned residential development, PRD, located at 5220 Quail Street. And we'll now listen to the city's presentation.
For the members of the audience, I know this is a little bit hard to see, but if you need to shift your chair to have a better view, feel free to do so. So, case number WS15, before I forget, Meredith Reckert, Wheat Ridge Community Development Department for the record. This is a request for approval of a 25-lot major re-subdivision on property zone plan residential development to accommodate 25 new single-family homes at 5220 Quail Street. I'd like to enter into the record the case file and packet materials, the zoning ordinance, and the contents of this digital presentation.
So entered.
Thank you. All notification and posting requirements have been met, therefore there is jurisdiction for Planning Commission to hear this request. And just another housekeeping matter, because this is a major subdivision, Planning Commission will be providing a recommendation to City Council, who is the final authority in the matter. And also, FYI, a neighborhood meeting is not required for approval of a subdivision. So with that, this is a 2014 aerial of the property, and you can see that it's outlined in red. North is to the top. It is bounded by Ridge Road on the south in this location, and Quail Street over here on the west. I would note that Quail Street is currently unpaved and also provides access to 4 additional properties to the north. The property is 6 acres in size, and I would note that there is a ditch that crosses the property along the southern side, and that will have to be accommodated as part of the subdivision and improvements to the site. So this is an interesting piece of land. The site is located in this location. Again, north is to the top. Ridge Road runs along the south with Quail Street up the west side. It's not quite an enclave, but it is surrounded by the city of Arvada on 3 sides. So this black broken line here represents the city of Wheat Ridge and the municipal boundaries. The gray areas in the other locations do designate the city of Arvada. So again, we've got Arvada. The site is located right here. Arvada in this location, Arvada up here to the north, and then Arvada to the east. So again, it's kind of weird. It is an extension of the city limit line. To the north is a single-family home zoned Agriculture 1, which is in the city. To the south, across Ridge Road down in, this location is a 100-foot right-of-way owned by RTD for the Gold Line improvements. And to the east, we've got the city of Arvada, which is Skyline, I believe, Phase 2, which is a single-family development. And then a vacant piece over here to the west, which is also in the city of Arvada, and it is zoned PUDI and PUDR. So a little bit of history. The property was rezoned from Agriculture 1 to Planned Residential Development in 2006. This is a piece of the ODP document, which as part of our planned development process, there are actually 3 approvals that need to occur. The first one is the zone change and approval of the ODP, the Outline Development Plan, which is the zoning document for the property. The second one is the final development plan, and then the third is the plat. And so the ODP document essentially establishes the development standards for the property. It's typically general in nature, and in this case, this is a page from it. It does show the boundaries of the property and perhaps a tentative lot layout. It also established development standards, including the minimum lot size being 6,250 square feet, a lot with 25 feet at the front property line and 40 feet at the front setback line. Also setbacks, which were established at 20 feet on the front and rear and 5 feet on the sides. The maximum height allowed per the ODP was 35 feet, and for detached accessory structures, 15. So again, that was approved in 2006. The next 2 steps of the process were for the final development plan and the plat, and they were processed after the zone change on the property was approved, as pretty normal business for the city. The FDP is actually taking the ODP one step further and actually kind of defining what the structures will look like, being more specific as far as the landscaping on the property and so on. This particular sheet was from the FDP, which shows the lot layout again, and then also down on the south side, it was showing landscaping, which was to occur around the detention areas. So they went through this process, and while all of the development approvals were secured, it was about that time that sort of the bottom fell out of the economy, and so no further development occurred. And because they did not provide security for the public improvements when they came back to us in 2014, we realized that they needed to go through the process again because none of the current standards were met by this document. So this is a page from the FDP again showing the lot layout and the landscaping around the detention areas. And also, it's going to look pretty much the same when you look at the most recent development proposal. Ridge Road is down here, north is to the top, and this is Quail Street running along the western property line. These were some of the typical elevations that were included within the FDP document. And I would note that the zoning is in place. We have an approved ODP that establishes zoning standards and an approved FDP, and these are still relevant documents. It's just the plat we're talking about tonight. And again, this is in 2006 the approved plat that was approved. And again, you can see that the layout is pretty close to what you've got in your packet as far as the new proposal. Again, north is to the top. We've got Ridge Road running along the south. We've got Quail Street coming up the east side. 53rd Avenue at the top, and then Pearson Street, kind of bifurcating the parcel. So, it's been 10 years. What's happened since then? A lot. Subsequent to the platting and the FDP approval in 2006, the Northwest Sub-Area Plan was adopted and also amended in that time period. The sub-area plan reflects important city accomplishments, such as approval of Envision Wheat Ridge, which is the city's comprehensive plan, which was approved in 2009. In 2010, we approved a bicycle and pedestrian master plan. And I would note that included within the Northwest Sub-Area Plan, there is also an indication for property to the west of the site to be a transit-oriented development surrounding the Word Road Station, which is now happening. The TOD site was supposed to obviously include the presence of transit, bike and pedestrian amenities, and a mix of uses including housing, retail, office, and light industrial. So when this subdivision was approved, the future Gold Line commuter rail line was not envisioned. And I think folks are pretty familiar with what that is. It's an 11.2-mile commuter rail station that connects Wheat Ridge with downtown Denver at Union Station. There are 8 stations along the Gold Line, and the last of which is the end-of-line station, which is in the city of Wheat Ridge at 50th and Word Road. We're currently under construction, and we should be up and operating in 2016. So the property is in an interesting position because it's located about halfway between the end-of-line Gold Line station in Wheat Ridge and then the Kipling Street station in the city of Arvada. And as part of that approval, of course, Ward Road, we took a hard look at that, and it was determined that in order to accommodate the light rail station and try to meet the needs and get folks to either station, if they're in the area, that there were going to be, considerable improvements along Ridge Road, including bicycle and pedestrian connections between the stations. So the street section requirements were increased from what we had in place in the 2006 timeframe to accommodate pedestrian traffic with separated sidewalks and so on. Another significant change that occurred was that to accommodate the Gold Line station construction, RTD went ahead and built a regional drainage ditch along Ridge Road, which is part of a regional plan called the Columbine Drainage Basin Plan, which actually helps serve the subject site. So that's also a change conditions. And of course, this is a rendering of the station design for those of you who haven't seen it before. So let's take a look at some of the slides of the area. The first one, I was standing in Ridge Road. This is looking north on Quail Street. You can see that it's sort of more of a country lane than it is a street. It is gravel and about a half-width section. And it does serve the existing property plus the 4 properties to the north. This is looking northeast across the site, and you can see some of the adjacent residential development in the city of Arvada. Again, that was part of the Skyline Estates filing number 2. Again, looking north on the site. Here I am standing on Ridge Road looking east towards the Gold Line station. And here I'm looking west. And you can see some of the improvements that have been in place by RTD. There's also some utility facilities on the south side of Ridge Road. So, that brings us to present day. The proposed re-subdivision plat is comprised of 3 documents. Sheet 1, which is, I think you're pretty used to seeing this by now, I call it the declaration page, and it's got legal descriptions and signature blocks and so on and so forth. There's notes on there that relate to maintenance of the existing or the proposed drainage easements and so on. We are making a recommendation that a note be added regarding maintenance of the common elements by the HOA. Sheet 2, which I did not include in the packet, or in my slideshow, but you have in your packet, is actually a sheet that vacates all the lot lines and easements that were approved back in 2006, just to make it a clean document. And then, of course, this is the third sheet, which is the heart and soul of the document. This sheet contains the layout of the subdivision, which modifies the lot sizes and widths of the original 25 lots. But I would note that all the proposed lots do exceed the minimum lot size and lot width, which were approved by the ODP. The street layout is really the same. Again, north is to the top, Ridge Road down here on the bottom, Quail Street up along the western perimeter, 53rd Avenue at the top, and then Pearson Court, which runs down the center of the property. And because the street widths and sections have changed, additional right-of-way was needed, so that's why we're here, is to approve the amended plat with the right-of-way dedications. So, as far as improvements, Quail Street, which is on the city limit line between Arvada and Wheat Ridge, will accommodate, with the improvements, 2 lanes of traffic with parking and sidewalks on the east side. And then it's anticipated that this vacant property to the west, when and if developed in the city of Arvada, will expand the width of Quail Street to be full width and include all of those typical public improvements. West 53rd, which is at the top of the document, or at the top of the property, accommodates 2 lanes of traffic and sidewalk on the south side of the street. Pearson Street, which is that internal street running between 53rd and Quail, will have 2 lanes of traffic with parking and sidewalks on both sides. As part of the changes that have occurred in the area, Dr. Cog recently initiated a study to analyze the proposed improvements along Ridge Road between the Kipling Street Station in Arvada and the Gold Line Station in Wheat Ridge. Called the Ridge Road Catalytic Project, it indicated that the street section for Ridge Road have a minimum width of 65 feet and would include 2 lanes of traffic, bike lanes on each side, and a landscape buffer on the north with a separated sidewalk. And I would note that the proposed subdivision is consistent with that document. In this plat, there's also, as was the prior version, 2 detention areas located along one Ridge Road, one in this location and another in this location, to accommodate the flows that come onto the site. Let's see. As Planning Commission is aware, anytime we do have a subdivision for new development, we do have to accommodate the drainage flows on the property. Generally, the stormwater enters the site from the northwest and flows across the property into the 2 ponds along Ridge Road, and then is released into the system that I referred to that was built by RTD. And I would note that Public Works continues to work with the applicant for approval of those civil documents. This is a chart that I put together that was included in the staff report, and it's essentially comparing the original subdivision approved in 2006 with the re-subdivision. And you can see that really the figures are quite similar. There's still 25 lots. The lot sizes have decreased a little bit in this re-subdivision, pretty much because the right-of-way widths have increased. And so we had a small reduction in the smallest lot area and the largest lot area. The width of Ridge increases by about 7 feet of right-of-way, 7 feet also in addition to what was proposed for Pearson Court. Quail Street increases by 1.5 feet, and then 53rd Avenue at the top increases by 5 feet. And however, the detention areas have decreased in size, and that's because of the improvements that were completed by RTD and the Columbine Basin improvements. So we went through our typical referral process for the property. Arvada Fire conserved the property but needs additional hydrants. 53rd must be signed as a fire lane on both sides, and they will require access during construction. City of Arvada expressed no concerns about the development. Valley Water conserved with improvements, as will Excel. Wheat Ridge Parks will require fees in lieu of land dedication. Police Department can serve, and then again, Public Works has reviewed the plat and the drainage report. They are asking for some modifications to the second sheet, which is the vacation sheet, and those should occur prior to City Council, and they will continue working with the applicant on the civil documents. So, staff has concluded that the proposed subdivision is in character and meets the standards specified on the ODP document approved in 2006. We further conclude that the re-subdivision plat reflects the city's updated standards for street width and construction, and that all the requirements of the subdivision regulations have been met. We are giving a recommendation of approval with 4 conditions that I've got on the screen here, and those are also detailed in your staff report. So that would conclude my presentation, and I'm open for questions.
Thanks, Meredith. For questions, let's start on this side. Commissioner Bowden, do you have any questions for staff?
Not at this moment.
Okay. Commissioner Dorsey?
Quail Street, is that going to be paved then?
Quail Street will be paved to a half-width street
Half-width, okay.
to the northern perimeter of the property, and then it will go back to sort of the country lane that I showed in the picture to the north of it.
If Arvada then, we will have our side of the street will be done and Arvada will finish if they do to the west, okay.
Okay.
That's it.
Commissioner Kimsey?
I don't have any questions.
Commissioner Timms?
I just have a question about the parcel to the west. You said it was zoned in Arvada, so that's a key thing. But it was zoned industrial and residential?
Yes, the current zoning on the property is planned industrial along the south portion and then PRD to the north. And I can say that as we've gone through the years, sort of the idea of what should happen in this area
Right.
has morphed a little bit. Right now, we're seeing quite a bit more residential on Ridge Road, so I'm thinking probably at some point they will come in for a zone change, just because it's a little bit out of character on the north side.
Do you know what Arvada's master land plan?
Pardon me?
Do you know what Arvada's master land use plan for that parcel is in terms of a designation? Okay.
It's the existing zoning.
And then the current property line, so for Quail Street, so the current road is on the Wheat Ridge side?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and so I believe that we've got 25 feet already dedicated. They have to add, I believe, another 5.
Okay.
Then the other half.
For it would be Arvada's.
would be Arvada.
Okay. Great. Thank you.
Commissioner Ohm?
No questions.
I had one quick question, just on the first sheet of Exhibit 7, where it's discussing stormwater detention and water quality areas. It mentions that basically the equipment and the installation of any sort of detention area would be put into place by the owner and maintained by the owner. But I did notice on the as replatted page that the easement for the ditch is going to be established by a separate document. So am I correct in understanding that the maintenance of the facility there will be the responsibility of the property owner, but the ditch itself will be owned by someone else?
The ditch company.
Okay. Is that typical?
It is. It
Okay.
is typical. We have to work with the ditch companies. They sort of have their own jurisdiction over their own facilities. Of course, any development on a property where there is a ditch has to be approved by the ditch company. But they like to do their own maintenance typically. So,
Yeah, I guess this just is a little unusual to what I've seen. We've seen in other cases where there's a ditch running through it, is that the stormwater area is like right on top of that ditch easement as well.
anymore, ditch companies are really not happy to take any sort of other flows, just based on the water quality that could come into them. They like to we used to, kind of back in the day, we used to allow detention ponds to drain into the ditches. We don't allow that anymore.
Okay. Yeah, so the stormwater detention would then run off into these other improvements that Dr. Cog and RTD have taken care of already or sort of put into place.
Correct.
Okay. If there are no other questions, thank you for the presentation, and we'd love to hear from the applicant. If you could come up and give us your name and address, and yeah, anything you'd like to say or add would be great.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the Planning Commission. My name is Bob Short. I'm the developer. And my comments would be very brief. If you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer those. I think Meredith pretty well covered the background of this property. We ended up obtaining the previous plat in 2006. Our timing probably could have been worse. I'm not sure how, but it was about as bad as it could be. So we've ended up sitting on the property for a considerable amount of time as a paper plat, if you will. Last year, because of the market improvements, we felt like we were in a position to go ahead and proceed with the development, which is obviously our ultimate goal, only to discover that the road right-of-ways were changing and thus requiring the change in the plat. And this whole process is primarily a result of that. Obviously, there have been some other things that have occurred during that time period, but for the most part, the plat is really being modified to accommodate the additional right-of-ways that are needed for the city. The changes in the lot widths, the widths themselves, almost all the lots are a minimum of 60 feet, and that really didn't change at all. It may have been one lot that got changed a little bit. Most of it was in the depth of the lots because of the layout of the roads going north and south. And because of the fact that we had considerable depth in those lots previously, 125 feet and more, we were able to accommodate that. The tier of lots on the east side pretty much stayed the same, with just losing a little bit of depth. The two tiers of lots to the east on the other side of Pearson, between Pearson and Quail Ridge, basically came down to the south somewhat. So we are prepared to proceed at this point, and I would entertain any questions that any of you would have, obviously.
Great. Commissioner Ohm, any questions? Commissioner Timms?
Just a question. Are you, sir, in addition to a developer, also the builder? Or would you then do the infrastructure and sell this to a builder who would build on it?
We will do one of two things. We do building as well.
Okay.
My background is a Genesee company, built a lot of homes in my heyday. And we're looking at possibly building this as well as doing the development.
Okay.
Alternatively, we've had discussions with a couple of other builders in the area, and we may approach the project with them as well.
Okay. Thank you. I have a question for you. Well, actually, I can ask you. Are there any plans for any type of, I guess, then subdivision signage? Would there need to be an easement or anything for that, or could that go within one of the, I guess, detention tracks?
Go ahead.
It's anticipated, yes, it would be signage.
Okay.
And it's anticipated that would be in one of those two tracks.
Okay.
Near the entry. We obviously see Pearson as being the entry point
Okay.
for most of the homes.
Okay. Thank you.
Commissioner Kimsey?
No, I don't have any questions.
Okay. Commissioner Dorsey?
No more questions.
Commissioner Bowden, any questions? All right. I don't have any questions either. Thanks very much for. All right. So now, if there is anybody else who would like to come and speak, I see you back there. Hold on one second. Meredith, did anybody sign our sign-in sheet? Okay. Definitely. Okay. So if you'd like to come up and ask questions, please address the commission, and we'll take note of your comments and questions and see if we can get those answered for you. If you could.
Greg Scala. I live at 5290 Quail Street. looks like to the north of that development, they have that as 53rd, because the 4 houses to the north of that are in the 5200s.
Okay.
I live at 5290, the house to north of me is 5300, 5250. I don't know what the next house down is, but they're all in the 5200s.
Okay. Well, we'll see if we can clear that up.
And then my other
Address
question was, on Quail Street, there's a lateral that runs for Wanamaker Ditch. Now, are they going to widen that road to the west or to the east?
Sir, are you referring to Quail Street? Whether it's lined?
That runs down for the ditch water?
Oh, I see. It runs north-south on one side of Quail Street.
Just, maybe 5 foot over from Quail Street?
To the, do you know if it's to the east or the west of Quail Street?
I'm sorry,
Is it to the east or the west of Quail Street presently?
it's west of Quail.
West of Quail. Okay. We can.
I didn't know which way they were widening that.
It's my understanding. Well, I'll clarify, but it's my understanding that it's being.
And my last question is, can we get a sign put up like dead end, no outlet, or radioactive waste or something? People turning around in our driveways. They keep it like in my mailbox, my fence, and they run off my landscaping timbers because everyone goes up there and they just turn around right there.
You're the one that chased me off today.
What's that?
You were the one that chased me off today? Okay.
But that's all the questions. I just
All right.
want to talk about the 53rd.
Okay.
Since all the houses north of there are in the 5200s.
Sure. Well, Meredith, can you speak to that at all as far as addressing?
Sure. Well, I don't know how old your house is, but I think that most of those properties were probably built in the 50s. Does that sound right to you?
And I think the top north one at the end of the road is 5300.
Right. So what we have to do is when we go and develop land, we have to follow the Denver grid system. So 53rd is where it would normally hit based on, kind of the whole region and what the connections with adjacent streets are. We won't make you guys get new addresses or anything. We wouldn't do that, but if we had to have a conversation with the post office to make sure that you're still getting service, even though 53rd, it doesn't really quite fall in sequence, we can help you with that. So.
I have one more question. Are there going to be any exits onto Quail Street? Are they going to Ridge Road or?
Okay. Well, I'll.
Sure. Okay. Well, yeah. We can address that. Great. And Meredith, if you can address Mr. Scala's concern about that lateral, that ditch lateral that goes off on the west side of Quail Street. It would be my assumption probably that that's on the Arvada side.
That's what I'm thinking.
So it'll be untouched.
Yeah, so, it sounded like the ditch was somewhere over in this area. They would have to develop from their property line in to the east, so hopefully there shouldn't be any disturbance. I don't know if their consultant was aware of that, so perhaps Mr. Kuntz, who is their design engineer, could address that.
Great.
And what was the other, the 53rd Avenue, which is the half street that would be built along the northern property line, does connect with Quail as it comes down, to Ridge Road. I think it's probably a really good idea to have the city put up some dead-end signs, just so, if we have looky-loos that are going up there and want to check out what's going on so that they don't continue north, and that's something we can take care of, I would suspect. I'll let Public Works know about that.
Great.
So.
Okay. Great. Well, thanks for that info. All right. Mr. Kuntz, could you just briefly address the ditch question? And if you could give us your name and address when you come up. Thanks.
Hi, I'm David Kuntz, 12499 West Colfax Avenue, Lakewood, Colorado. So there's an existing ditch just to the west, and we addressed it in the drainage port. Basically, it picks up all the drainage from that site, and we're not touching it. It's doing a great job, and we're planning on leaving it right there.
All right. Great. While he's up here, does any of the commissioners have any questions for him on the engineering? Okay. Thanks. Is there anyone else who would like to give any commentary or ask any questions? No? Okay, great. Well, with that being known, I'll close the public portion of the hearing and entertain motions and discussion.
I'd like to make a motion to recommend approval of case number WS-15-02, request for approval of a 25 lots re-subdivision plat for property located at 5220 Quail Street for the following reasons. Number one, the proposed lots meet or exceed the standards specified on the approved ODP document. Number two, the proposed re-subdivision plat reflects the city's updated standards for street width and construction. Number three, all requirements of the subdivision regulations have been met. Number four, utility districts can serve the property with improvements installed at the developer's expense with the following conditions. Number one, a subdivision improvement agreement including required financial security be executed whereby all public improvements are in place prior to issuance of building permits for the individual lots. Number two, the developer pay park fees at the time of plat recording in the amount of $62,425. Number three, a note regarding maintenance of the common elements in the development by the HOA be included on the front sheet. Number four, the homeowners association covenants be reviewed and approved by staff.
Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
All right, do we have any discussion?
Mr. Chairman, I do have one comment. We're still working with the developer as far as the parkland fees. There's a set amount, but if they're within a half a mile of a transit station, there is a reduced amount, and so that $62,000 might not be correct. So just you might want to strike that from the motion, even though that's what I have in my suggested.
Commissioner Ohm, do you mind striking the specific number from your motion?
We can strike that specific number and just leave it as to be determined by staff at a later date.
Okay. Do I have a second on that revised motion, please?
I'll second that.
Thanks. All right, any further discussion? All right, I'll call for a vote, please.
That motion is approved, 6-0.
All right, thank you for that. Next item on the agenda, other items. Are there any other items? Meredith, is there anything you want to discuss?
Let's see. Other items. Well, just an update, a couple housekeeping measures. We've got a couple new members, and we try to do training with Planning Commission at least once a year. So we will probably be eyeing some date in the next couple months to try to do some training, it's a good refresher and also helps the new members. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that I think that perhaps the commission was aware that we're down a couple planners right now. It's just Lauren Mikulak and myself. We're both senior planners. We did go through the interview process for the Planner 2 position, and we were actually able, we think we have a new employee. We haven't finalized the details yet, but hopefully that person will be coming on in the latter part of June. And then once we get that person trained and up to snuff, then we're going to advertise for the Planner 1. We had interviews for the chief building official position, which was vacated, I think, in mid-April, and so hopefully we've got found a candidate. I was not on the review board, but we had 4 folks who came in. Some of those were local, some were out of state, and I haven't heard anything since then, but hopefully we'll get somebody on board. Ken's been the acting CBO, and that's been, he's had kind of a lot going on.
Got a lot going on.
That's everything I've got, unless anybody has any questions. Kim, did I forget anything?
The June 18th and July, was it 2nd, meetings will be canceled.
Okay.
You can all take your 4th of July vacations.
Okay, all right. Any other items from the board or commission up here? Anybody? All right. Well, great. Well, thanks for the news, Meredith. Can guess the last item here is something called adjournment. I don't know what that means. I don't know what that is.
Mr. Chairman, make a motion to adjourn.
Have a second?
I'll second.
All right, let's vote.
I would guess that motion would be approved 6-0.
All right, thank you, everybody. We'll see you maybe in July.